It's early enough here on a Sunday morning that there's no real traffic on our road. Thought it was an opportunity to walk down the jungle of our driveway and take a look at the living wall at the end of our driveway that keeps us visually sheltered from the road and thick enough, dense enough to the point where it's almost hard to even get around in our own landscape, but visually it does some really good work in keeping privacy for the hens from the road and giving us a really nice sheltered sense as well. So let me take a look. And that's the chicken yard right there. It'd be nice to take a moment and actually call out some of the cool characters, excuse me, sir, that are right along the driveway here. There's Senna, really gorgeous flowering nitrogen fixer here. It's not as though we need a nitrogen fixer this close with all the fertility from the chicken yard, but they're there and they're happy. There's some jewel blackcap raspberries that are weaving through the fence line. There's a really nice overstory pawpaw. I was there actually from a rotten fruit that I put there a bunch of years ago. Goji berry weaving its way through. There's an oak tree in here, and then some tulip poplars that are volunteers that eventually will cut out. Then yastaberry underneath. There's an Alden grape weaving its way through. Some black currants in there. Some ground nuts. Nanking cherry, hazelnut. It's really kind of gorgeous how much fertility there is from the chicken yard that's generating all of this ample growth. I have to cut it a few times a year. Each time we drive by now, we're getting hit by the hazelnut crop, so that's kind of fun. It knocks the back of the window on the car, but we'll wait till the crop is done. But anyway, I get sidetracked here. Let's take a look at the living wall along the road. It's really in a nice moment right now. I went through with a scythe in the front area where it's herbaceous along the ground and mowed it relatively tight, raked that off and sent it into the plantings, and then went through with an electric push mower to actually mow it a little bit tighter. I think it actually does a few things. It makes a space that's much easier and safer for people to pull off the road and be well off the white line. We have folks come by enough that having simple, safe parking makes sense. I think it also unifies it a little bit with the look of the neighbor's space in a way that might help take the edge off for some folks of how intensely different it looks otherwise. I mean, it is turning straight up into a forest in here. And I think visually it helps pop things a little bit. There's a nice thimbleberries in here that have a really great highlight now that things are mowed a little tightly around them. They can also start sending suckers this way that we can dig up. So the mowing, it's not something I want to do all the time, but it really, I think it helps pop the whole scene a little bit, and it has some nice layers of functionality as well. It's sweet too that in the process of using the scythe through here first, I was able to keep an eye out for plants like meadowsweet. This one just showed up. It makes sense, it's a moist area, but we're able to mow around them. There's a little ash tree there. I thought that would be nice to give a chance to grow. There's some comfrey here, and then also some senna seedlings, which I don't remember putting seed down for, and more meadowsweet, even a little amaranth, a little red amaranth, and some black currant. So a nice chance to kind of mow around some of these islands of cool characters that showed up. Let's look at the actual wall itself. So here is the northeast corner, and similar takeaway from the past of one of the last updates. I was talking about how some of the elements got so tall that they're no longer really serving the function of creating a visual block, which is still very true, but I'm not going to cut them in the middle of the season. The hybrid poplar and the black locust that's the black locust there. They're definitely the characters that are shot right up past everybody else. They are casting shade that's out in this direction, so at this point, maybe they could be overstory elements. I'd love to hear from folks if they have an opinion about whether or not it makes sense to cut them. But just as an example, here's an OP367 hybrid poplar that has been left to grow since we put the cutting in the ground a few years ago. It's easily, 30 feet, 40 feet tall now. And then here's one where I went through and cut them back very hard. You can see the Pollarding cut right there. That's where I topped it probably a year or 2 years ago. There's another one right next to it. Same topping cut. And now the very bulk of their body is in an area where it makes a dense visual barrier, they would probably do well to get cut back again this winter. But that pollarding, that heading cut, is extremely supportive of the visual barrier game from 4 to 8 feet. I'm standing here at that same corner, but looking up our neighbor's driveway. I'm going to link here to a video where I talked about the pruning work that happened in this particular area back in the spring. I documented the process of pollarding a number of the alder and the willow that were in this area, and the amount of regrowth is phenomenal. So this is all regrowth from this season, and extremely dense, extremely green, right where we need it. Same thing with the alder. It's so dense I can't even really get into there, but this is all new, vigorous growth. So imagine if we had animals that could eat these leaves, we could be harvesting them to feed the animals while getting regrowth that rebounds exactly where we need it. So this whole hard cut idea seems threatening, seems scary, until you get into it a bit and you realize these trees just respond so intensely. There's another hard cut right there. All the regrowth right here. So lots of green right where we need it. Easy for us to access, easier and easier each time for us to maintain and renew those cuts, as opposed to here, reestablishing that pollard is going to take a lot more work. But we can do that later on. But this right here is about as thick as I could ever want the living wall to be in the growing season, between the English walnut, which will be allowed to grow into the overstory, and then the pollarded alders and curly willow. We can't even really sense that there's anything on the other side of that, but 10 feet away is where the chicken yard starts. There's some characters that are just holding on for dear life, but I think we'll do okay. There's a variegated willow here, still doing its thing. The perennial sunflower, which did so beautifully early on, they're starting to really lean for light. So it's another check in the box for the argument of pollarding some of the other plants so that they have a chance to get more light. And the same thing, I think the miscanthus is truly starting to fade out of this system now. They're starting to fall over more and more frequently with heavy rains and winds. I think if they had full sun, their bodies would be thicker and stronger and they'd flop a little less. So I could imagine them actually fading out. But here we've got the elderberry filling in. So again, we've talked about this before with this whole series and this whole system. Having that diversity of characters makes it so that one fading out just makes room for another one that's better adapted to fill in. So elderberry we can lean into in a stronger way. The alder, the curly willow on a pollarded management schedule would be a way to fill in any of these gaps in here. So we've got lots of ingredients right in the hedgerow that we can just repeat as needed. A fun task that I have to do every week or two at this point is maintain a visibility for pulling out. I've got my old Ford F-150 truck, and so what I do is periodically pull right out to where I need to be able to see down the road, or if we have visitors, need to be able to see without having the tailgate dip out past the white line at all. And I go make a mental note, and then I go through with loppers and pruners and cut the visual corridor. I think if I didn't do that, it would be green right up to here, and you'd have to be out with your vehicle to here before you could see things. So there is a safety aspect that has to be accounted for and maintained pretty vigorously in a system like this to make it safe for people to come and go. It's the same game on this side, just pruning in such a way as to easily see right down the road so we can see far enough to be sure that we can pull out. This is a busy road and we need to be able to visually have full access. So the plants are amazing and wonderful, and we also need to chop and drop as needed. Even on a Sunday, it feels like the traffic is picking up. So I'm going to wrap it up here, but this would be great. In the comments, let me know if you've got some questions or ideas, some suggestions of different management pathways that you'd like to see happen. Is there a vote on whether or not it would be worthwhile to pollard really hard some of those trees, or work with the idea of having some overstory trees that just stabilize into the landscape? I'm leaning a little bit more towards the idea of having at least a few standards, some nice full-size trees that can just grow into maturity in this area. But as I'm standing over here, I'm realizing, okay, that poplar, that really needs to be cut. It's all the way through the power lines now. So there's maintenance. Setting a system like this in motion, you need to have an awareness of what you're doing with utilities that are around, with safety of people moving through. There's certainly responsibilities of setting in motion this intensity of plants in keeping infrastructure safe, people safe, animals safe, and the like. So it's fun learning what these additional layers are of maintenance that need to happen. But that's it for the living wall and the mid-peak of the jungle summer. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're developing a living wall where you live, what sort of ingredients have been working well, what hasn't worked, and let's have some dialogue around good, robust, natural visual barriers between our spaces and busy roads. Hope you have a lovely day.